This is an art collage novel video. I made this series so you guys can experience the story faster. The video will focus on the character's psychology, the images are for illustration purposes only. Baiming Lifeng's face instantly turned pale and bloodless. A great sense of shame and anger welled up in his heart, and his face was completely twisted. He pointed at Yunxiao and roared, "Li Yunxiao. Are you really not going to give me face?" Yunxiao's face turned cold as he said sarcastically, "Did I not make myself clear enough? Then I'll say it again, get lost." Baiming Lifeng's face was flushed red with anger. He was so embarrassed that he couldn't show his face in front of such a beautiful woman. He couldn't remain calm anymore. With a loud roar, his aura suddenly exploded. Lifeng. Suddenly, a calm voice rang out. It was none other than Baiming Kongtian. A wave of sound waves directly entered Baiming Lifeng's brain, causing him to feel dizzy. His body trembled in the sky before he gradually regained his senses. Baiming Kongtian's face turned serious. Baiming Lifeng's talent was already 1 in a million, a peerless talent that was hard to come by in 1,000 years, but it couldn't block Shui Xian's beauty. As a young man, it was indeed excusable for him to get caught up in it. However, Yunxiao and Run Xiang's eyes were as clear as crystal, without a ripple in them, and not even a hint of surprise could be seen. Their hearts of martial arts were so strong that Baiming Kongtian could not help but feel a chill run down his spine. These two young men were too terrifying. Moreover, Mo Sha's strength was not much lower than his, but the two of them had seriously injured him, and even had the power to kill him directly, which sent a chill down his spine. He had been constantly raising his evaluation of Yunxiao, but every time he found that it was still too low. If they continued to grow like this, who in the world could suppress them in the future? Baiming Kongtian's heart wavered. Was it worth it to spare Yunxiao's life for the sake of the tyrant body tempering technique? After being shouted at, Baiming Lifeng's furious divine sense suddenly sobered up, but his face was still ferocious. He pointed at Yunxiao and said coldly, "Li Yunxiao, you and I are irreconcilable." Yunxiao shook his head and patted it. "You've been trying to kill me all along the way, why are you only irreconcilable now? Did I make a mistake? You coward." Baiming Lifeng was rendered speechless. He pointed at Yunxiao angrily, but he did not know what to say. "Trash, you've wasted so much time. Since no one wants to kill him, I'll do it myself." Shui Xian stomped her foot angrily, raised her jade-like hand, and formed a seal in the air. Baiming Lifeng's face was flushed with embarrassment, and his anger and killing intent were directed at Yunxiao. But no matter how much he hated Yunxiao, he did not dare to make a move. Whoosh! As Shui Xian formed an incantation seal in front of her, the golden light around her became brighter. The ocean below suddenly surged with waves, and an ancient sound rang in the sky. Every word contained extremely strong laws, knocking on everyone's heart. Yunxiao's face flickered as he looked into the sea and saw a large shadow emerging from below. Then, he raised his head and looked at the golden light around Shui Xian, as well as the ancient sounds that could tug at one's heartstrings and shock one's heart. His eyes were filled with horror as he finally knew the origin of this woman. His face darkened and he said coldly, "The daughter of the Poseidon family?" Both Water Immortal and Run Xiang trembled in surprise, not knowing how Yunxiao could recognize her. All the human cultivators, including Fei Ming, were shocked. They looked at Shui Xian in disbelief. Although they had guessed that this woman had an extraordinary background, they never thought that she was the princess of the Bo family, the lord of the four seas. Just as Shui Xian was about to say something, a rainbow suddenly streaked across the sky, chasing them from a distance. It landed directly beside them and fell into the sea. The entire sky suddenly became clear and the sea gradually calmed down. The waves gradually subsided. The shadow in the sea Yunxiao saw also slowly disappeared. He looked puzzled and frowned as he looked at the rainbow. The other end of the rainbow was on a huge island in the distance. It was shrouded in clouds and fog, and the spiritual energy was pressing. "Isn't it a joy to have guests from afar?" A long voice rang out in the sky, and a figure could be seen on the rainbow, walking from afar. The newcomer had the air of a sage and a smile on his face. With every step he took, a ripple would spread under his feet like a lotus flower. Yunxiao was taken aback. His eyes were as bright as torches, and he immediately discovered that the newcomer was a human. The Xiankong Island Grand Meeting is about to begin. It is our honor to have so many powerful warriors coming from afar. I, Xiao Wenzhan, to welcome all of you on behalf of the great island master. The man took a few steps and arrived in front of everyone. He looked up at the 9th grade battleship, then at Shui Xian. He nodded and smiled faintly. Then, his eyes swept across everyone like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water. However, everyone felt a chill in their hearts. It was as if all their secrets had been exposed with that casual glance. But, there were a few exceptions, and Yunxiao was one of them. Xiao Wenzhan glanced at Yunxiao, then stopped and looked at him up and down. Little brother, you're a 9th-tier alchemist? Yunxiao's eyes flickered as he said coldly, aren't you the same, sir? Everyone was shocked, and only then did they realize that the man in front of them was also a 9th-tier alchemist. Alchemists were rare in the 4 seas, so their status was extremely high. He did not expect that there would be a 9th-tier alchemist on any island, which showed how extraordinary the strength of Xiankong Island was. Even Shui Xian's face could not help but change when she heard that. She gave Yunxiao a few more looks and said, so, you're a 9th-tier alchemist. As long as you hand over the Black Flame Mountain and pledge your loyalty to me, you can be spared from death. Yunxiao waved his hand impatiently and said, I hate these kinds of brainless remarks the most, can you please shut your mouth? Don't think that men will give you face just because you're pretty. Other than those toads who have their sperm in their brains, who else would hang you? You coward. Shui Xian and Baiming Lifeng were both furious. You know my identity and you still dare to treat me like this. Aren't you afraid of death? Shui Xian's face turned pale with anger. The crowd also looked at Yunxiao in confusion. The princess of the Bo family was one of the most powerful people in the world, and even the Saint Realm and the Sea of Soul Formation did not dare to offend her. Not to mention that they were still at sea, even if they returned to the continent, they would not dare to offend someone with such a background. Yunxiao frowned. What do you mean? Do I have to kneel down and lick the soles of your shoes just because I know your identity? Shui Xian was stunned. She was not good at retorting and could not say anything for a while. Yunxiao stared at her coldly and snorted. No one is born noble or lowly. All honor and status are the results of one's own hard work. You are just born with a more powerful bloodline. Do you think others should have no dignity to lick your shoes? Everyone's mouth was wide open, and they were somewhat dumbfounded. In this world where the strong preyed on the weak, strength was dignity and the right to speak. Without strength, one had to kneel and lick others' boots, which was a well-known law. But Yunxiao's words had struck the soft spot in everyone's heart. Yes, who is born to lick others' shoes? You're just born in a better family. Run Xiang also frowned and pondered. Yunxiao slapped his palm toward the sea, and a water column shot up. He reached out and caught a fish in his hand, then said coldly, in my eyes, you're no different from this fish. After that, he threw the fish back into the sea and said, at least this fish is working hard every day for its own livelihood, but you? You're always relying on your family background to run amok everywhere. Speaking of which, you're even worse than that fish. Shui Xian's mouth was wide open in shock, and she stammered, you dare to say that I'm not as good as that fish? You deserve the death penalty. Yunxiao's face turned cold as he snorted. Death penalty? Your illness is acting up again, it's time to go back and take your medicine. Shui Xian had a stomach full of anger, but she didn't know how to get angry. The other party's words were quite reasonable, but she felt that something was wrong. She only knew that every sentence of the other party was condemning her and pointing at her faults, but she couldn't refute it. Her eyes were red with anxiety, and she was about to cry. Everyone was sweating profusely. Yunxiao was probably the only one in the world who dared to insult the daughter of the Ocean Emperor. Run Xiang also found it indescribably strange. He thought to himself that Yunxiao was indeed a man who did not care about his life, but he also had a trace of admiration for him in his heart. Only such a fearless heart of a brave man could achieve such proud achievements. Zhao Wenjian also laughed bitterly in his heart. He had long known about Shui Xian's identity. He did not expect that there would be someone who would not give her face. This was really the first time he had seen it. However, the young man in front of him was a 9th-tier alchemist at such a young age, so he must be a proud man with an extraordinary background. He saw that the atmosphere between the two was getting more and more awkward, and no one came out to smooth things over. He was afraid that things would get out of hand, so he hurriedly said, "All of you are heroes of the world. It's fate that brought us together in the Xiankong Island. I hope that all of you can give us some face and let go of your grudges. Let's have a cup of tea on the island and wait for the start of the treasure show." Everyone looked at each other. They had never heard of the Xiankong Island or any treasure show. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Baiming Kongtian and Baiming Lifeng. After all, they were the leaders of the group. Baiming Kongtian frowned. He cupped his hands and said, "We just happened to pass by and didn't mean to disturb you, so we won't bother you. Please send our regards to the first island master." It seemed that this Xiankong Island was not a simple place. Their destination was the ruins of Donghai Palace, and for fear of causing more trouble, they immediately decided to set sail and leave. "You can't leave!" Shui Xian shouted at Yunxiao in a hurry. "You haven't returned the Black Flame Mountain to me. I want to save Mo Sha." Yunxiao turned around and gave him an evil smile. "What does it have to do with me that you want to save Mo Sha? Run Xiang was the one who injured him, you should be looking for him." Shui Xian was stunned for a moment and thought to herself, "That's right, what does my saving Mo Sha have to do with him?" It was Run Xiang who had injured him. Her eyes immediately turned cold like the ice of the 12th lunar month as she looked at Run Xiang. Run Xiang's forehead was full of sweat and he was speechless. He had heard that Princess Shui Xian was smart and had amazing talent. It seemed to be true, but she was inexperienced and lacked the experience of interacting with people. In the past, all the people she had gotten along with were careful, obedient, and would grant her every request, protecting her like an ancestor. But now, when she encountered someone like Yunxiao, who completely ignored her, she was at her wits' end, or rather, lost, and did not know what to do. In the end, she was just a little girl, and she was stunned by Yunxiao's words. Run Xiang felt bitter in his heart. Yunxiao could ignore her, but he could not. He smiled bitterly and said, "Why would Princess Shui Xian appear here? Now that the demon sand guard is seriously injured, it's very dangerous for you to be outside alone. I'll get someone to send you back immediately. I'm afraid that the Sea Emperor is very anxious." Shui Xian shook her head. "I'm not going back. It's not dangerous. I still have the golden armored guards to protect me. I'm also very strong." The golden armored guard was the puppet that was carrying Mo Sha behind her. There were golden lights shining on it, and all kinds of strange runes kept flashing on the puppet's body. One look and one could tell that it was a high-grade item. Run Xiang's face immediately fell, and he thought to himself, strength was indeed fine, but intelligence was limited. Strength couldn't take over everything. He showed a concerned expression and said softly, "Princess Shui Xian, please be obedient. When I'm done with my business, I'll definitely bring some fun things to see you." Shui Xian's pupils shrank and a cold light burst out. She said coldly, "Run Xiang, you're so bold. How dare you treat me like a child and coax me?" Run Xiang's face darkened. He felt very innocent and helpless, so he could only say, "What does the princess want to do now?" Shui Xian's eyes revealed a trace of confusion. She thought for a while and said, "I don't know. The person I'm looking for was killed by you guys. I just want to save Mo Sha first before planning my next step." "The person you're looking for was killed by us?" Everyone had a question mark on their heads, not knowing why. Shui Xian explained the whole story. Everyone was stunned and sighed. They thought to themselves that this was too much of a coincidence. The sky was so big, and the expert of the Longhorn Sea Tribe happened to step on the spatial node. He did die a little unjustly, but this was his fate. Fire god art? A cold gleam flickered in Run Xiang's eyes as he fixed his gaze on Yunxiao. He had fought with Yunxiao several times, and he knew that the latter had an extremely powerful divine fire in his hand. Zhao Wenjuan suddenly realized. So Shui Xian Princess came to our island to find fire elemental martial artists. But isn't it a little too mysterious just based on a prophecy? Yunxiao was also a little stunned. He touched his nose and said, "Who's that scammer who divined your fortune?" Scammer? Shui Xian shook her head and said, "He is not a liar. His divination skills are very good. Even my father once praised him. His name is Duanmu Yuyu."
Ah.
Everyone's mouth was wide open in shock. It was unexpected that the name of the person who guided Shui Xian here 3 years ago was actually that earth-shaking name. It was like a star shining in the vast sky of martial arts, guiding countless powerhouses to move forward in their footsteps. This was a name that could make one's blood boil just by reading it out. Bai Ming Kongtian said in a deep voice, "So, it's the martial sovereign child Yu who has the title of Heaven Yen. His divination skills are unparalleled in the world. It's said that he can enter the current of time and see the past and the future. If it's him, then I can't be wrong." Yunxiao also frowned and fell into silence. He did not know much about Duanmu Yuyu, and in his previous life, he had never paid much attention to divination. However, the origin of the cold sword and frost was related to a very powerful diviner, and from the current situation, the fire divine arts practitioner that Shui Xian was waiting for was him. No flame in this world could defeat his Phoenix Divine Fire, not to mention that the Phoenix Divine Fires might had increased to a level that even he could not understand after fusing with a wisp of the demonic heart flame. It was undeniably the #1 divine fire in the world. Could it be that divination really works? Yunxiao could not help but be puzzled. If it was really useful, what secret in the world did clairvoyance not know? That's right. The person I've been waiting for 3 years was killed by you. Shui Xian was furious. Her eyes were filled with ferocity as she swept her gaze across everyone. Although her gaze was sharp and shocking, the men who were swept by her gaze were not afraid. Instead, they felt extremely honored. They all stepped forward, straightened their chests, and tidied their hair. "I've heard of Duanmu Yuyu's divination before," said Run Xiang faintly. "Since it's so accurate, how could the person you're going to meet die so easily? If he really died the moment he appeared, Duanmu Yuyu should be able to divine it and tell you. Did he say that the person you were looking for died after meeting him once?" Shui Xian shook her head and said, "He didn't say that. But in the entire Xiankong Island, there are only 3 people who cultivate fire-type sacred arts, and they are all dead. This is it." Run Xiang was now almost certain that the person Shui Xian was looking for was Yunxiao, and he knew some of the reasons. The treasure show has yet to begin, and all kinds of experts will be coming one after another. Perhaps some powerful people have been hiding all this time, so you can't find them. Zhao Wenjuan also laughed. This friend is right. Miss Shui Xian, why don't you wait until the entire treasure exhibition is over? There will definitely be unexpected surprises. Shui Xian's face brightened. She said happily, "Now that you put it that way, it seems to be the case. All right, I will wait until the end of the treasure show. I hope I can meet the person I am looking for. Otherwise, I will not be able to meet him. Otherwise, I will not be able to meet him." Her expression suddenly dimmed, revealing a deep worry. Everyone looked at her pitifully, wishing that they were the person she was looking for, and immediately stood up to help her solve her problems. So it's that reason. Run Xiang sighed in his heart. There was hesitation in his eyes as he stared at Yunxiao. A martial artist's face turned red, and he finally couldn't help but step out and shout, "Princess Shui Xian, although I don't major in fire-type martial arts, I once refined a fire-type demonic beast and extracted its demonic fire. Maybe I'm the person you're looking for." He shouted and formed a hand seal in front of him. A ball of green fire appeared on his body, emitting extremely high temperature. "Pfft, you have the nerve to take out the flames of a 6th-order monster beast to embarrass yourself?" Even though I do not have a mystical fire, I have trained in the blazing sun palm. It can be considered as half a fire-type sacred art. Princess Shui Xian, please take a closer look and see if the person you are looking for is me. A martial artist beside her chided. He roared, and a ball of blazing sun appeared in front of him. With a loud shout, he struck out with his palm, and an extremely fierce palm print condensed in the air without dispersing, emitting an extremely powerful force. At this time, the rest of the people also stood up and showed off their skills. Anyone who had anything to do with fire or temperature tried their best to show off, hoping to be noticed by Shui Xian. The temperature on the 9th grade battleship continued to rise like a furnace. Everyone was covered in sweat. One of the martial artists even roared and threw 3 punches in a row, causing dust to fill the air. He shouted, "Princess Shui Xian, even though I do not cultivate fire-type techniques, my earth-type sacred art is very powerful. Do you think I am the person you are looking for?" Shui Xian. Zhao Wenjuan's eyes were filled with amazement. These martial artists were all extremely powerful, with the lowest being a martial venerable of the 8 Desolation realm. He was greatly shocked and could not help but say, "I wonder which sect this lord belongs to, and what important matters he has to attend to. Perhaps my Xiankong Island can help him out, after all, we are quite familiar with this sea region." "Thank you for your kind intentions, Mr. Baiming Kongtian refused, but we don't want outsiders to get involved in our sect's internal affairs. I'm not trying to interfere in your affairs. It's just that I'm afraid you don't understand the situation around the Xiankong Island, do you?" Zhao Wenjuan smiled. Baiming Kongtian raised his eyebrows and said disdainfully, "The situation? We have a 9th grade battleship, so we can go anywhere we want." Zhao Wenjuan chuckled. "The situation I'm talking about is not dangerous. It's just that the waters here are a little special. It's difficult to get out without guidance. Furthermore, all spatial coordinates will lose their effectiveness in this area." Baiming Kongtian's expression turned serious. He immediately sent a voice transmission to the person in charge of locating the warship. Soon, he received a response, and his face immediately darkened. Zhao Wenjuan laughed and said, "How is it? Wenjuan didn't lie to Darren, right?" Baiming Kongtian reined in his attitude and said humbly, "Then how can we get out of this sea region? I hope teacher can teach me." Zhao Wenjuan said, "It's actually very simple to leave these waters. That is to wait. Once time is over, the spatial coordinates will return to their original direction." It turned out that there was a magical mountain range under the sea. The field it emitted could attract the power of space. This strange power would only appear once every 5 years, which was when the treasure show was held. During this time, all the space recorders would be in chaos, and they would not be able to leave the sea. People from the outside world could only enter the sea during this time. If that's the case, doesn't that mean that the Xiankong Island only opens once every 5 years? Baiming Kongtian asked in surprise. Zhao Wenjuan laughed. "That's right. That's why you're all here at the right time." Baiming Kongtian hesitated for a moment before he said, "Since that's the case, then I'll have to trouble Lord Wenjuan. However, I wonder how long this spatial disorder will last." Since he couldn't leave in a short time, he was forced to stay. "The time is uncertain," Zhao Wenjuan said. "But at most, it will be around a month." They could still afford to wait for a month, so Baiming Kongtian immediately nodded. Zhao Wenjuan revealed a knowing smile, and an undetectable light flashed in his eyes. Suddenly, a voice was heard, "The spell that Lady Shui Xian used just now, I wonder what kind of magical power did Lord Wenjuan use to erase it?"